Domino Thinking presents Natural Born Speakers with your host, Alison Donaghy. If you were born to talk and want to know how to build your career around it, then Natural Born Speakers is the show for you. Now grab your seat because this is the place to be. Now here is your host, Alison.
Hi, this is Alison. Welcome to Natural Born Speakers. I am super excited to have Anna Coleshaw-Echols here. I just met her at a conference that was in Victoria, British Columbia called SOHO, Small Office, Home Office, and she was one of the featured speakers, and she was also a one-on-one expert, and tons of really, really great information, so you will definitely want to stay tuned and listen to everything that Anna has to say. So today we're talking about rocking the resolution that this is the year you conquer your fear of public speaking. Anna is known as the Chief Fear Slayer. She is on a mission to cure the world of the fear of public speaking. Give her an hour on stage, a week of workshops, or just one day, and she will edutain you. Edutain you? I think that's right. Yep. While initiating a life-changing journey. She has a blog that you can follow on her website, Good to Great. PS, as in publicspeaking.com. You can also contact her there. She has books, and if you want to create a book club, she is more than willing to Skype in and do some workshops with you. She also does classes, 3, 4, 5-day classes. She is a speaker and she coaches, so anything speaking related, this is your go-to lady. Hello, Anna.
Hi, Alison.
Hi.
Very excited to be with you today.
Thank you so much. Really happy to have you here. I would love it if you wanted to maybe tell our listeners a little bit about your journey, how you got to, you leave high school, or maybe yours even started before high school, and then you enter into this big, bad world of work and growing up, and then you end up here. How did that all happen for you?
Yes, well, we can all go back to our first memory of public speaking, and mine was, I think I was around grade 5, standing up in the gymnasium in front of the whole school in some sort of contest, I remember, and I look back on it now and I know everything I did wrong. and I've used that as a basis, but I didn't have the fear. There's some of us, 40% of the population fears public speaking more than death. Unfortunately, for those people, that's what I help them with. That's fortunate. But fortunately for me, I actually skipped that, and I must be part of the 60% that don't fear it more than death. And that includes the police officers that I've trained in the past, too.
Interesting.
Debunk that myth, yeah. So grade 5, yep. But when I was in the mid-90s, actually, I had the opportunity with my employer to go take a marketing training course that was 15 modules long, and one of the modules was public speaking. And I zipped through that course. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed learning from all my peers, and I thought this is pretty cool, and I kept working through the program. And when I graduated with honors, the school, which was the British Columbia Institute of Technology in Vancouver, asked me to come back and teach for them in their marketing department. And I started off teaching customer service and then was quickly asked to teach public speaking. And I found my love, my passion. Not only do I love teaching adults, I love teaching people to overcome that fear and to really blossom and bloom. And so one of my keynotes is just saying yes to public speaking, because you never know where it's going to take you. So that was back in 99, 2000, and around there I started teaching. And I quickly grew it into my own training business, and always wanted to write my own textbook for the course. And so when I was teaching for the 4.5 years at BCIT, I kept it in the back of my mind, and I kept a folder, and I kept a dream alive, and put it on my bucket list that I will write a book, I will write a book, I will write a book. And 10 years later, I finally wrote the book.
Good for you.
So I've worked with all kinds of people, all age groups. I've worked with, just recently I spoke to grades 6, 7, and 8. I've worked with high school students, and I've worked primarily with the 18 to 65 demographic. And I find primarily I really like to reach out to women that are 35 to 55 that are in that point in their career that they're either having to step up into a role where they're leading meetings or speaking to large groups, or they become entrepreneurs and they have to get out there and share their wisdom. We all have experiences and life happenings and just wisdom that we have to share, because if we don't, the world is poorer for it.
That's a really good point. Quick question, though. Do you deal primarily with women?
No, I work with both women and men, but I just find that, nothing against the boys out there, but it's the women that really want to step up and conquer this. The guys don't seem to have as much problem with their confidence of just getting up and talking, but as women, we tend to find it harder to find our voice. And it was interesting. I was out at a university event last night with a bunch of first-year students and third-year students, and I found the same thing. Like in a networking situation where, I'm older and I may be intimidating to these 18 and 20-year-olds. I don't know why, but...
No, my God, you're so approachable.
Thanks. I try to be.
You are.
And I just found that if I could just sprinkle some stardust over these young women and just give them that package of, the gift of confidence to stand up and speak. And, it's a real special thing when you can share your voice and your opinions and your wishes and dreams with a group.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I do have a soft spot for women, having, because I am one, and it totally resonate with what you're saying, and that whole, do I even have anything of value to say? And when I see guys just, talk about stuff, they do seem to have this different level of relationship with sharing their story and less concern somehow with how it's going to be perceived by others.
Yeah, and I drill down and try to get people to go back to those instances where that and it's a lack of confidence, there really isn't another word for it, where that was germinated, where it grew, and where it was watered and fertilized and allowed to kind of take over our voices. And it's not that in this generation, in this day and age, that we are not an equal part of the world, and we're not, well, in this part of the world anyways, North America, we're not made to be the other sex or lesser than or anything. So it's interesting when you do run into women in and around North America that still feel that stigma, I guess, or
I think it's very, very prevalent. Yeah, like I own another business. I own a house painting company, and so being female in the trades, I see it all the time, and it's but it definitely rears its head in different platforms, I think, over other ones. And I think there's definitely areas where women are treated very equally to men, but I do wonder how far along that continuum we are. And
so anything I can do to boost up women and make them feel better about themselves and give them that pixie dust and help them sparkle, that's my why in the world and my passion. And it works for men too, because there are some very shy, introverted men out there that have great stories, and it's just phenomenal when you see them have that breakthrough, no matter what sex.
And it's not to say that just because men have the confidence that they're actually good at presenting their story, they still, with proper training and help and tips, they can definitely improve their story and make it more listenable. Is that even a word? I don't know. I keep making up these words. But
edutaining. There's my word.
Yeah, edutaining. Yeah, my other one was talk aboutable.
Yep.
Yes. And
what? We are never taught public speaking.
No.
You're taught it? Do you know that I was sitting beside the dean of the business school last night, and the profs are never taught it, and the high school and elementary school teachers are never taught public speaking. And so you wonder why students are coming up the ranks that just don't know how to do it, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And well, isn't that true?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're never taught the secrets and the easy bits, and I teach an outline that's just, I call it my secret, well, my students call it the secret formula, and it's just a fill-in-the-blank outline that just helps them catapult over that, the wasting of time to write out a speech verbatim, memorize it verbatim like Meryl Streep does all her movies, and all the actors do for plays and such. That's not speaking. That's acting.
Right.
And we have to separate those two and go back to having a conversation with our audience and keeping it free-flowing, keeping it to one page, and not trying to be the Obamas or the Justin Trudeaus or any great political speaker that's reading off a teleprompter, because that's not really what speaking is.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely performing.
Yeah. People want to hear your authentic voice and your speaking persona, and they don't want to see how much you look like another speaker. If you're a Tony Robbins fan, like, yeah, you're jumping around the stage and you're bada bing, bada boom, and that's not authentic for a lot of people.
No, it's certainly not my style. Mm-hmm. And I can understand how it appeals to people because it keeps energy high, that sort of thing. Yep. I find that over time I tend to get a little bit tired. So I definitely like listening to a wide variety of styles.
Yeah, for sure. And we saw that at Soho, didn't we? We saw a little bit of everyone.
We did. The opening speaker, you were there for that. I think you were sitting right behind me. Yep. Mark, was it?
Yeah, Storberg.
Yeah, and he was so entertaining. He had great story, great presence, and it was so easy to connect with everything that he was saying.
Mm-hmm. And very visual. He comes from a visual background.
Yes. Yeah, it was great. And then the closing woman who owns the president, CEO of Accent Hotels.
Yeah, and Hotel Z.
Yeah.
That was...
And I remember listening to her when she first started. I kind of went, and then she got into her story, and it was like, oh, she had me hooked.
Oh yeah, she was awesome. What a great end to the day.
Oh, so good.
Because I was kind of waffling after I presented. I was done about 2:00, and I thought, should I stay or should I go? And it's hard as someone who trains public speaking and coaches speakers to watch a lot of speakers, do their thing because, in some instances it's painful actually.
Well, and I can't even imagine because I know how painful it is for me.
Yeah.
Watching some speakers and going, whoa. I paid to come and see this. And I think there does come down to that element that, yes, you have a responsibility to your audience. And by working with people like you and preparing and being good and being aware justifies charging and being up on that stage.
Oh, yeah. Well, I read a really great stat from someone that was speaking at a big conference, but if we even just take the Soho conference, it was 250, 260 people there, and they're listening to Mark do the opening keynote for an hour almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so 250 hours of their time were invested in that room. And so as a speaker, would you spend 250 hours getting a keynote really perfect? Like, that's a lot of time, but still, when you think about some of the people that just want to go out and wing it, they are not respecting their listeners. They're not planning it out. They're putting too much content in. They're rambling and they're getting off topic, and they're just not present, a lot of them.
Yes.
That's another way to look at presentations is how many people are in the room, how long is your presentation, and you should be basing at least a good third of that time on preparing a great presentation.
Yeah, and that makes total sense, and it's so respectful to your audience and to yourself and to the stage to do that. I was at a presentation, and this guy had 40 minutes to speak, and he brought 5 hours, at least 5 hours. It could have even maybe been 5 days if he had actually worked it out into a big workshop, but at least 5 hours of information. Well, and he tried cramming it all into 40 minutes.
I know. That's... and you're just like, your brain's about to explode. There's too many things going on.
Yeah, and there was some really good spots, and it was just like, could you just talked about that for 40 minutes? You would have been brilliant. And that, I think, comes with training and understanding the craft.
Well, and sometimes you need a coach. Like, just do a dress rehearsal a week before, and the coach will say, look, you're trying to cram, Walmart into a 7-Eleven. Like, that just doesn't work. Like, it's too much information for people.
I love that.
It's a total good analogy.
I'm gonna have that visual forever.
But you need to leave your audiences wanting more from you, like with questions and reaching out, and you don't have to give them everything. Like, give them a taste test, like just like the Costco samples, right? If we're going to use some retail analogy here.
Carry on. We like shopping.
Piece of your knowledge, like it's not a brain dump. Yeah.
So do you do that with people if they're preparing a speech? Would you work with them through Skype to hear their speech and work with people on that level?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they can come to me with their speech already ready and do a dress rehearsal, and it's just sort of an hour of where I watch them and I give them written and verbal feedback. It can be, I have this topic I need to present at this conference, and I'm not quite sure where to start. And, that can be 3 or 4 or 5 sessions. Like, over the course of a week or two to get them ready, and that includes a dress rehearsal. Or it can be, I'm speaking a lot and I want to run every presentation by you, and that's just sort of a month by month basis. But they have something going on every month and they want just another set of eyes and ears on what they're doing. And Skype is the best thing. When I started this company 15 years ago, we didn't have Skype, we didn't have smartphones, we had fancy big VHS tape cameras, and that was
hard to believe now, isn't it?
Yeah, but we always had PowerPoint, like even back 15 years ago.
Yes,
it still is my nemesis. Like I am very anti PowerPoint actually.
Why is that?
I would say 95% of the time it's not used properly. It's too many slides, too many words on every slide. People forget it's a visual medium where they should be sharing photographs or videos or snippets of what they're saying, not their entire set of notes. I always say it's a 3x5 rule. You can have 3 bullets and 5 words per bullet, or you can have 5 bullets and 3 words per bullet. And that's it. Like don't expand it where you've got sentences, right?
Yeah. I went to a presentation and it was seriously an hour of somebody reading their own PowerPoint. It was the most painful thing because I could read faster than they could read. So I was already done.
And if you can present without PowerPoint, ask yourself, do I really need the PowerPoint first? Because Murphy's Law, talking about Mercury retrograde, right? Check that.
Yes, we were.
Because if you're going to use PowerPoint during Mercury retrograde, it will fail. It always does. And so that's going to add your first level of stress. Like,
yes.
A, is it going to work? B, is it going to keep working? Am I going to flip through multiple slides by accident? Like we saw that happen at the conference, and people are really good about, getting back on point, but it can really fluster you. And so I tell my students, because most of them are the scared spitless. They are the people that won't even go to a Toastmasters. They don't want to they just don't want to speak, but they have to. There's people who won't speak ever, and then there's those that hate it and are afraid of it, but will do it if they get some proper training.
Right.
And it just adds so many more layers of complexity when you add in very complicated visual aids like a PowerPoint if you don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that like with all props? Do you feel the same with all props or just mostly PowerPoint?
Well, the prop has to be appropriate for the presentation and for the audience. So in a big room like the speaking theater, you need to have big props. Like if you're up a photo, that wouldn't work when you have 260 people trying to see one little, 4x6 photo. So that's where PowerPoint comes in handy. But I always think you should have some sort of prop. Like, I did a speech, just a small speech to about 20 people, and I was talking about the 4 different legs of my business, the coaching, the training, the writing, and the speaking. And I brought in 4 different hats. And as I switched topics, I switched my hat. So my coaching hat is my ball cap, and it looks like I'm going out to the hockey game and, got my hair all up in my cap. And then my writing cap is, of course, you think of Paris and you think of the beret and
nice.
And something a little different as opposed to just standing there and talking about yourself. Like give them a visual clue. So when they see a ball cap now, hopefully they'll hook back to my memory of my presentation. And they'll think, Anna, speech coach, right?
Right.
And you're just kind of planting that seed. So it could be something that's not even relative to what you're talking about. Like it could be flowers, right? It could be seasons. It could be, you just bring it down to some 3 points, 3 props. And as you transition, you change props. And it could be visual aids like going to the flip chart or sitting down at a stool, across the stage. And some people call that holographing, where you set yourself up to speak at different points on the stage. So you're not just stuck to that one podium lectern, where the notes rest, or leashing. I call it leashing when you have to stick by a computer and click a PowerPoint button. Like now we have remotes and everything, but it's nice to be unleashed and to get out into your audience.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. It's certainly from an audience perspective, the longer the speech, the nicer all those sort of things are.
Oh, yeah.
Because it does allow us to stay engaged. And I think the hat thing is brilliant because it helps us, I think, stay focused on what it is that you're talking about at that moment when you're having the hat on. I hadn't even thought about the long-term effects of something like that, whereas when you see a hat out, then it reverts back to you too. So for marketing purposes, it's so
a branding strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything. It could be, you could pick the most popular thing, and even some people will pick the daily news. So as the people are listening, like I saw a speaker once who tied in, it was the anniversary of Michael Jackson's death. That day he was speaking, and he said, like today's a very important day. It's the anniversary, and I forget which anniversary it was of it, but every day, all day long in the news, as you were hearing about the anniversary and seeing the clips from Michael Jackson dancing and hearing his songs on the radio, I kept thinking about this speaker and how smart he was to link his message into the message of, the day of what's going on with additional free press from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It is a great tip. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about when you're dealing with those new people who want to speak, but they are just so absolutely petrified to even think about it, but they have a wedding coming up and they want to, so they're the mother of the bride or the father of the groom or something, and they really want to get up there and talk, or their job is demanding it. What is it that you suggest for them to do?
Well, you have to give them the foundation of tools. So first of all, you have to get them to do a mind shift. And it's not a speech, and you're not on a stage, and you're not alone. So you have to, if someone's okay with having a conversation one-on-one or in a small group of 4, then they should be speaking like they're having a conversation with their audience. So they're throwing out questions, they're looking at them, they're watching the body language, they're looking for the smiles and the nods, and kind of sharing their conversation with the whole room. And so many people, like, they're up there, they're in the spotlight, oh my gosh, like, it might be for a first time. And if they change their mindset and just shift it a little bit so that they have that conversation mentality as opposed to orator on the stage, which is, how we all picture public speaking. And we just talk more with the audience as opposed to just being the talking head on the stage. So there's a book I wrote, and it's 37 solutions to the most common speaking anxieties. So people are so worried about so many things. There's so many things going through their mind, and a lot of it boils down to, I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to mess this big deal up. Right? Especially at a wedding, you only get that one daughter getting married one time.
Ideally.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all hope.
But what is it, like 51% divorce rate right now? So, yeah, you could get a second chance.
Yep. So that's funny. But you need the foundational tools. Like, first you need to take the fears and knock them down. So that's why I wrote that book, Presenting Fearlessly, to get people thinking that if they had these fears, and these are all from my students over the years, like, these were the first thing we did in classes. We'd write them all down. I'd knock each one off the board, erase it after I gave them a solution, and then just said, look, we're all in the same boat. We all have a fear of public speaking, but know this, like, if anyone's into sports and your favorite sports team is playing, I'm a figure skater, so when my favorite figure skaters get on to competition ice and want to go skate at the Olympics, I don't want to see them fall. I don't want to see them mess up. I want to see them do the very best they can. And that's what the audience is there to do too. They're not there to judge you and see you fail. Like, they want to see you succeed and know that they're there to assist you in succeeding.
Right.
And sometimes that mind shift, it helps when you kind of let the fear of judgment and the fear of being in the spotlight go a little bit. That's a foundational tool.
Right.
So
and it makes sense, because as an audience member, I really want that person on stage to do a good job. Like, I'm always rooting for them.
Yep.
And I can't think of anybody I've ever been with who is just like, I hope they crash and burn. And if they do, it's probably some personal reason, and they shouldn't be at your presentation anyway. But I think you're absolutely right on that. The audience does want to see success.
Yeah. And it's not just for public speaking. Like, once you learn how to organize your thoughts and how to get your words out, it's, this is for job interviews, media interviews, like we're talking right now. Like, you can take your business so far and your career so far once you master just some of the basic principles of organizing your thoughts in speaking in public.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever come across somebody who is just so shy they have a hard time even having a conversation with somebody?
So there's a small percentage of the population that will probably never be public speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So if they really want to break through that, I have a therapy team that uses tapping theory, the EFT, that works with their anxieties. Because there's that phobia that's very strong, and it's all up in the head. And if you can get over it, you will public speak. If you can't get over it, then I don't know what people can do if it's not hypnotherapy or tapping or talk therapy or any sort of cognitive behavioral therapy. If they can't get over that shyness and introvertedness and that lack of confidence, then I don't know if anyone can help them.
Right.
Like, they really have to have a big why and a want, and it has to be on their bucket list and their New Year's resolution list, and they're like, this is the year, this is the month, I'm going to get this done. And
right.
that's what it takes, and just keep practicing, because I think if they can get just around the corner from that, whatever it's going to take, whether it's therapy or practice or just a good cheerleader, and it's all for the good.
Right, that makes sense. Well,
yeah.
And at Soho, when you did one of your presentations, unfortunately, I only got to see part of yours, but you had said there was a table off to the side that only had 2 people sitting in it. And you said, if I can have a conversation with one person, then I can have a conversation with these 2 people.
Exactly.
And then you went over to a bigger table that had like 6 or 8, and you said, then I can have a conversation with now these people, and how that then translates to an entire room.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is easy to win, hard to lose. So if you start off with a real easy win, like just getting up at the dinner table, and people who have introverted children, like they can start doing this, like just get them up talking about, there was a great, I'm totally blanking on his name, Kevin, not Spacey, the other one. The Bull Durham one.
Costner.
Kevin Costner did a really great movie. I think it was with Michelle Pfeiffer, and they did a high-low every night at dinner. What was your high of your day? What was your low of your day? And if you could get your kids just, comfortable talking at the dinner table, and then move them maybe to the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner table, standing and saying grace or whatever, tradition is. Thanksgiving, some families go around and say what they're thankful for the year. And you can start small, right? And build up. You can, offer to present at your sales meeting where there's only 4 or 6 of you, and then, just say, like I said, just say yes a little bit more when people ask you to speak, standing at a book club, standing to ask a question. Like I had that situation come up last night, and I was just, if you stand to ask a question in a group, the speaker can hear you better. So It's just little baby steps to getting, like I said, around the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I've been to networking groups, too, where people they're representing their business, and they can't do a 30-second infomercial.
Yeah.
Just explaining what their business is, and it has such a negative impact on how their business is viewed.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to say who you are, what you do, and why you do it. 30, 60 seconds, like, that's what it takes for business. And I belong to some networking groups, and there are people who won't even come as my guest because they are that petrified. And I'm like, oh, well, I have a solution for that, too.
Way to go, Anna.
Yeah, I'll transform you into fearless. Like, that's why I call myself a chief fear slayer, because I want to be out there just getting those fears, zapped and taken away and off the desk for people so that they can move their careers or their businesses forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then, sorry, I interrupted your flow a little bit when I wanted to ask about that. The people who can't have one-on-one, you were going to head on to another point, I believe. Do you remember what that was?
I don't.
You
but
don't.
We're talking about foundational tools.
Yeah.
And so once we work through some of the fears, which is usually, about a half day of my 6-week course, everyone gets a chance to speak about little things like that. And then we move into how to structure a speech. Mm-hmm. And it's I say it's fairly simple, and I try to make it really simple in my book, Giving the Gift of Public Speaking, so that people can pick it up and read it, whether they want to do ebook or actually hold a physical book in their hands. But it's a step-by-step formula that I teach. And it's the way I taught the course for 4.5 years there for BCIT, that I I have seen work, and I had those speakers who couldn't get up on the first day and say that 15, 20 second, who you are, what you do, why are you here, and then the last week, so 6 weeks later, they want to go first. They want to do their motivational, like TED Talk kind of inspirational speech. It's 20 minutes, no notes, and they want to go first. Like I want to set the bar here, and it's just fantastic to see the transformation in people when they get the foundational things, and then they get the other information in bite-sized pieces. They get a chance to practice the 4 different styles of speaking, and then they have those forever. They can walk away with that demonstration information speech that you might do at a networking event to talk about your business. They'll walk away with adding creativity to every speech they do, so they'll never be boring again. Right. That's one of the fears. Mm-hmm. And then they get the ability to persuade the audience on things that they're passionate about. And then, of course, the motivational, inspirational speech that a lot of us love hearing. Like we love hearing about people's lives and how they overcame, and I just find it fascinating, the people's stories that are out there, and we just have so much to share.
And how critical do you think the stories are? Do you think it's changed, like from when you started back a while back to now? Has stories always been important? Are they more important? What role do they play?
Well, I think stories and storytelling go back, to ancient times. That's how we shared our history and our wisdom, and we taught the next generation. And, now since I started teaching in the 15 years, we didn't have TED Talks, and we didn't have YouTube to go watch TED Talks.
Whatever did we do?
I know. We had to go pay to go see someone. And heaven forbid they didn't come to our little small town in, Tuktoyaktuk, Northwest Territories or something.
Yes.
There's so many tools out there that it can be a little overwhelming to just delve down and watch so many people, and you don't have to imitate them, but you can learn so much now online about great speakers and how they organize their thoughts and how they use visual aids, but you can watch too much of that and it can get very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is definitely an influx of it.
Yeah.
And what do you look at? And at what point do you start losing your own originality because you're spending so much time trying to emulate others?
Yes, that's a great point, because I am very cautious about watching too many other professional speakers and even reading a bunch of their books on public speaking, because I wanted it to be my own authentic voice when I wrote my book, mm-hmm. and when I write my blog posts, and when I teach. I love picking up tidbits from other people, but I always credit them back. You have to get comfortable in your own skin and develop your own speaking persona and make it you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess it's good to know that nobody knows what you're going to talk about as much as you do.
Exactly.
They may say in a different way, or they may have a different opinion, but you're the expert on your own speech.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Going back to grade 5, where I was assigned a topic, I remember I had to do a class presentation once on the state of Nevada. I'd never been to Nevada. I knew nothing about Nevada.
You hadn't been gambling at that time?
I was underage, so I didn't know about gambling and casinos. And I was supposed to do this presentation about the state of Nevada. Well, that's not how real life works nowadays. Once you get out of school, the boss doesn't say, here, I want you to present on Brazil, and you've never been to Brazil. You might be doing part of the research team that's going to present something, but you're typically going to be the expert in the room.
Right.
So you're an entrepreneur, for sure.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to... It makes sense. Yeah. It does. But school doesn't always make sense.
Concrete or painting or... plumbing. I'm talking about public speaking every time I get up and speak, or I'm talking about myself, and I know quite a bit about myself.
Yeah, I would hope so. Now, do you ever work with teachers so that they can work with their students about generating really good, positive public speaking experiences?
I haven't yet, but that's a great market for sure. My editor for my book was actually a teacher. Is a teacher. She homeschools her kids now, and that's where it really opened my eyes that educators aren't necessarily educated on public speaking. They do it. And when she was reading the book, she's like, oh my God, if I'd been taught this in teachers college, I would have been such a better teacher. Even just the chapter on thinking outside the box with creativity and how to bring in, different ways of doing the same thing. Math is math and history is history, but how do you make it exciting for those kids? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's an age gap there, and
Yeah, and I think the needs of our schools are changing so much. Like I took a course to teach English as a second language, and I went to Italy and I taught there for 6 months.
Oh, neat.
And yeah, it was quite the experience, but more than the travel and the teaching was the actual course that I took, because I think it was like a 6-week intensive course. I had to go over to Vancouver for it because I live on Vancouver Island. And it was crazy intense in the morning. Everything that we learned, every single thing that came out of our teacher's mouth had a purpose. And then in the afternoon, we got to practice that teaching.
Yeah.
And it was very different than watching my son's teachers, excuse me, and the stuff that they would talk about had nothing to do with the lesson or the teaching. And I think those teachers who do really well with the students stay very focused and be really creative and speak well. Yes. And then they get their children or their students doing things that encourages them to do their things well.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you've had the opportunity to have fantastic teachers throughout your life, and I've had a few that I'm still in contact with them, and it's been almost 20, 25 years now.
Wow, yeah.
Since I was in their class, but they inspired me just in the passion for the subject. And, it's like any job, right? You get into a job, you're in there for, I had some teachers that they taught my brother and sister who are 12 and 9 years older than me. Like they'd just been teaching forever.
Holy smokes.
They did the same art projects. They did the same Christmas concert thing. And until someone finally cut the cord on that one. And you get stuck in a rut, and sometimes you need a little nudge to change things up a bit, and to keep. It's a cycle of continuous improvement. No matter if you're a teacher or a speaker or a business person, you can always do something a little bit better.
Well, and teaching itself is just such a tough job. Like I stopped doing it for a reason. I wasn't built for it, and I certainly admire people who can go out there and do a really good job at doing it.
You expend a ton of energy, and if there's one thing that you can know when a speaker's on stage is that like they are oozing energy out of their pores. And I've done speaking engagements where I've come home, like when I teach on the 6 Saturdays, I know when I come home that I can't plan anything for Saturday night because I'm just going to have dinner, veg for a couple hours maybe, and like hit the hay. I might make it 2 hours after I leave the class, maybe 3. And I just and I may have just been evaluating that day, not even presenting so much. And so a speaker just extrudes energy, and you have to be there as an audience member knowing that to give them back a little bit of that energy. Ask the questions. Don't leave them hanging at the end of their presentation when they ask, who has the first question? And you have that dead air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always feel bad at that moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the enthusiasm and the clapping and, just appreciating them getting up there and doing their thing.
And that's another hard one for people too. Do you find that accepting the applause?
Yeah. Well, when you're sharing your passion and you're bringing people, to the light in whatever you're talking about, it's just so. It's such a relief. It's such a great feeling to have shared as a speaker that the applause is just the icing on the cake, and it's not even the icing, it's barely the sprinkles, right? It's nice to have, but it's such a euphoric feeling just to share.
Right.
When you get to that point in presenting where you look forward to presenting and you look forward to sharing and you're talking about your passion and you're changing people's perceptions, then that's reward enough. The applause is, it's nice to have, but you get to the point where you don't need it. You just want to see.
Well, I think more where I was going with that is it's difficult. Because a friend of mine took a course and he said that they had to stand on stage and just stand there and let people clap for a minute. Oh, and he said it was one of the most difficult things he had to do was just accept the gratitude of the audience.
Yeah.
That when he was done speaking, he just wanted to get off the stage and then, bask and appreciate the applause from a distance.
Oh, okay.
But he was surprised at how difficult it was to just stand there and appreciate their appreciation.
Yeah. Oh, and if you watch any performer or any speaker, they're pretty quick to get off the stage because, that's what they're feeling. It's like, I'm done. I did my part, and now it's the audience's turn to do their part, but I don't need to be standing here. And Yeah, like well, it's a Canadian thing too, I think, in a lot of ways. We're pretty darn humble. Yeah, it's sometimes you need to just take it all in, and I've done it in my class too, where I've noticed that the class may be a little less confident, and I'll have a round robin of people verbalize what they liked about the presentation right after they present, and they have to stand there and take it all in and just know that they did good, because of course as humans, and anyone who's been trained in a performance of any sort, whether it's a sport or acting or anything, you're micro-analyzing everything you just did, and your brain's all up in the negativity. Like, we're so quick to go there that we need to learn to see what went well.
Right.
Yeah, we can analyze what went wrong, and we can start to think what we do differently next time. But first off, you should make a list of what went well.
Yeah, for sure. What a great exercise.
Yeah, it's a great debriefing exercise.
Now, you made mention of, because you have more than one book, don't you?
I have 3, actually.
3 books.
It was supposed to be just one book, but it kind of expanded.
Oh.
It grew on its own somehow overnight. It blossomed and grew other flowers.
And what happened there?
Well,
how did that all come about?
I started writing the book, and it was a 30-day project, actually. I challenged myself to write my book. That book I'd had in my head for 10 years. I sat down and wrote it in February 2013. And I said, okay, it's the month of February, which is a short month anyways. It wasn't a leap year. And I said, I'm going to write this book this month. And I got a little cheerleading team together on a private Facebook group. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to need your help on those days where I just don't feel like writing. And the goal was to write 50,000 words in 30 days. So it's about 1,700 words a day. And I was already writing blogs that were, 800, 1,200 words. And I went, yeah, well, I could write 1,700 words like in an hour or two, like no big deal. So that's what I did, and it just flowed off my fingertips. Like when you're in your wheelhouse and you've got all that knowledge trapped in your head, which we all do, and it could be a memoir, it could be a family history, it could be your life story, like it could be on a topic that you do every day. It comes, like it really does, and it was a really fantastic experience. But then I took what I'd written, it barely got over that threshold of 50,000 words, which they say is like the minimum for a book.
Right.
And then I started looking back at the book and showing it to some people, and I had lists in the book, and I didn't really explain things. I just, that's how we taught in class. We did 30 do's and 30 don'ts of public speaking, and it doesn't really read well in a book as just a list of 30 small, 5-word sentences. So I cut that out and I put it to the side, and then after I finished writing, I went back and worked on some of these other projects, and I blew them up a little bit bigger, and then I showed it to a publisher, and the book was still too big, and she's like, so how can you make this shorter? And I said, well, I'll hack the front chapter off. It was 5 parts, so I hacked the front part off, which then became Presenting Fearlessly, which it's 100 pages printed, so it's about, it's a day read. I wanted it to be something you picked up at the airport, you read on the plane, when you got there you were pretty much finished the book, right?
Right.
The bulk of the book, which is the thing people could use as a book club wherever they are in the world, or just read themselves, it's all a self-help, self-guidance book called Giving the Gift of Public Speaking. That was the main book I was writing. And then the nice little spin-off was another short book. It's actually about the same size as Presenting Fearlessly, called Avoiding Presentation Pitfalls. And those were those 30-some do's and 30-some don'ts. I think there's 57 altogether. And it's like, don't do this, do that. And it's a quick tip sheet. Some people who've read it said, I keep this by my bed, I just read one every night, and, over the course of a few months, they pick up a tip every day that they can use. And you can use this stuff in everyday conversation. Like one of the chapters is how to get rid of the ums and the ahs and the repetitive words. And that's the only way you're going to get rid of them, is if you axe them from your everyday conversations, because when you get up on stage, they're still going to tag along if you use them all the time.
Yes. And that's terrible. I think I mentioned in one of my other interviews, I had a sociology instructor, brilliant man, but you couldn't understand what he was saying because every third word literally was
Oh. And then the audience starts counting those, and they're not listening anymore.
Yeah, that's what we did. He was brilliant when he stopped using them. Brilliant.
but he probably used them everywhere he spoke. But he was probably brilliant, and I've been told this by other people. He was brilliant, so brilliant that his mouth could not keep up with his brain. And it is a sign of extreme intelligence, actually, people who do and ah, but it does make them sound really, really, really dumb.
Yes.
Yeah, and somewhere, we've allowed that to become the norm. I had one student, his word was basically, and he said basically in a 6-minute presentation like 14 times. You're
Wow.
right. I know it's 14 times because after the first 3, I started counting them. And it was such an odd word for him to have picked up. So people will start with and ah, and then they'll move to okay or right.
So.
And then so, there's tons of things people just overuse. And that's in the practicing. You want to do one of your practices just straight to audio. So if you have an MP3 recorder or use your phone and just record it. But then when you're listening to it, listen to it with your eyes closed. Because you're just hearing, you're just focusing. Even if it's on video, watch it once with your eyes closed where you're just getting it. Watch it once with the sound off if you have video and just see your body language. Because it's not just the words you're saying. Your body's saying 55% of your message for you with your gestures, your eye contact, your shuffling of your feet, your whole head to toe. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a whole language in and of itself, isn't it?
Oh, yes. That's a new book, actually. I've been offered by a psychosomatic expert who did her training out of Australia to write a book, guidance on body language, and she's just fantastic. Like, whew. And she's a face reader, and everything that your body is saying that, if you know how to read it, if you're in sales and you know how to read body language, like, you can make a mint.
Yeah, it's like that TV show. Did you ever see it, Lie to Me?
Oh, I think I watched it once.
Yeah, and it was fascinating how he would, discern people's emotions. And I think it really is an interesting field to study. So that would be a really exciting book for you to write. Yeah,
well, that's on the bucket list. So I needed to take a year off from writing. So
nice. Well, yeah, you got to refuel and do other things and.
Yep, and reach out and talk to great people like you and get new ideas.
Thanks.
Talking to teachers
and say yes.
Yeah, and say yes to some more things. And it was interesting talking to the dean of the business school, or the acting dean actually, last night, because their profs actually, they have a collaborative coaching program where the profs will go into each other's classes and observe and analyze and provide feedback in a coaching model to each other. So they're in a continuous state of improvement because, things get a little stale after a while. And I think that's just fantastic. We can all be open to receiving constructive feedback. And we have to get rid of that word criticism and judgment. And, but if you're in a cycle of continuous improvement, you're always getting better. And my students who took my class, like, I teach it 3 times a semester, and I taught it for 4.5 years. So hundreds of students, the ones who took it at the beginning, if they came back to take it 4 years later, it was not the same class. Right. It had grown and expanded and changed, and activities were different. And the outcomes are still the same, but
well, and you do have to grow and change, right? Because life is just it's movement.
Yeah. Well, and these speakers that are on the circuit, if you've seen them once, you've seen them 100 times. Some of them just regurgitate that same presentation over and over and over again. So you don't have to see them more than once. And if you, heaven forbid, you watch a TED Talk and then you go see them speak, and they're doing the same talk. Exactly the same words, exactly the same gestures. They're very robotic, and it just loses some of the authenticity when it's just rote, right? Like, it's repetitive and the same all the time.
So how do you avoid that? Like, when you get success in one of your speeches, how do you keep it? We don't have to be quickly because we're almost out of time here. But how do you avoid that? How do you still keep it fresh?
Well, it's just like I said with the profs. You have to get a coach in of some sort, or observer, to say their opinions on how you could switch it up a little bit. You flip the points around. Maybe you change your visual aids. There's 100 ways to change up the same information.
And I suppose there are some people you want to go back and hear the exact same things, but in my mind, they're more like comedians. Like, I want to hear Russell Peters do the dishes joke.
Yeah.
And I want to hear him tell it to me, and I don't care how many times he tells it to me, but to go and listen to a motivational speaker.
Yeah, exactly. You want someone that's got some either entertainment or very much education. My guy that I could see present again and again is Dr. David Foote, the boom, bust, and echo guy from Toronto. I've seen him twice in Winnipeg, and I would see him anytime he came to town because that information, it grows and changes as the decades, as we progress every 5 to 10 years. But, he's fascinating how he takes something as boring as statistics and demographics and, tells you how to run your business.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If you get a chance to Google him, Dr. David Foote, he's amazing. He's one of my favorite speakers.
It's David Foote?
Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't even think it has an E on the end. It might.
Okay. Well, good to know, and that's a good tip for our listeners out there to see about speakers that inspire our professionals.
Yeah, and he uses PowerPoint pretty good too.
Oh, well, if he gets your approval on that, that must be really good then. That's excellent.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty confident.
Well, thank you so much for spending this hour with me. It went by so quickly.
It did.
And I wish we had more time to talk about more things. And any of our listeners that would like to get a hold of you can do so at goodtogreatps, as in publicspeaking.com, goodtogreatps.com. You can get a hold of Anna there and work with her in improving your confidence to slay your fear. And any last words?
I called my book Giving the Gift because I like to give people more than I say I will. So if they're over on the website, click the blog, and there's 70 plus tips on public speaking. So wow. I'm sure there'll be something that'll help you right away with whatever presentation you have coming up in the next week.
That is so great. Well, how generous of you. Thank you so much, Anna.
Happy. Thank you.
Thank you. And as for the rest of you, I'd like to thank the producer, Deb, and really excited to be on here on boldradiostation.com, working with W for Divas. And in the meantime, speak up because you have something to say and we want to hear it.
Thanks for hanging out with Natural Born Speakers. But don't stop now. Contact Alison with questions or to be a guest on the show. Alison is also available for speaking engagements. Check us out at dominothinking.com. See you next Saturday.